My child has been through more than most people would go through in 5 lifetimes. She did 7 years of chemotherapy. She's about to have her 13th surgery.
When you look at her now, what makes you most proud of Sophie?
I literally call her the mayor of planet Earth. She's telling me on a regular basis, Mom, I love my life, but I'm in a broken body. I want to be a normal kid.
Tracy Ryan, the co-founder and chief communications officer of NKore BioTherapeutics. After her daughter Sophie was diagnosed with a relentless brain tumor as an infant, Tracy turned that fight into a mission.
My goal in life is to make cancer a word that is not terrifying anymore.
What was the moment when your mind shifted from adjunctive help to we may need to repair the immune system itself?
Dr. Jewett, who ended up being my business partner, was the one who agreed to do this work. She calls me up one day and she was like, Tracy, I don't know what to tell you, but I have some very interesting findings. This is where the discovery came in. Sophie, from the neck down, had extremely high functioning and very well functioning natural killer cells. In her brain, she had 0. I had found the woman that not only figured out why my daughter has cancer, but had the therapy that could potentially fix this poor problem.
Hello and welcome to BioTalk Unzipped, where our mission is to unzip, unlock, and uncover the stories behind medical progress. I'm your host, Gregory Austin. I'm a life science professional in Kansas City, and along with me is my friend and co-host, Dr. Chad Briscoe. Chad is a bioanalytical scientific leader from North Carolina. Here at BioTalk Unzipped, we bring experts from different corners of the pharmaceutical, biotech, and medical device worlds to share their innovations, insights, career journeys, and personal stories to the show. Today on BioTalk Unzipped, we are joined by Tracy Ryan, the co-founder and chief communications officer of NKore BioTherapeutics. After her daughter Sophie was diagnosed with a relentless brain tumor as an infant, Tracy turned that fight into a mission, helping lead the development of a supercharged NK cell therapy designed to bring new hope to cancer patients. She's now a nationally recognized advocate and speaker in pediatric cancer and patient-centered innovations. Hi, Tracy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to join you, gentlemen.
We're very excited to have you on the show. And before we get into our regular conversation, it's our tradition to give a $100 donation to the charity of your choice. And your important charity is savingsophie.org. Tell us about what that is and who it benefits.
I would love to. And thank you so much for that very generous donation. I truly appreciate it. We developed or created savingsophie.org probably about 12 years ago now for our daughter, Sophie. It's her namesake. But we use this foundation as a way to raise money for patients like her because we're always trying to save more Sophies. My husband and I have dedicated the last 13 years of our life to helping to advance research around the world, raise millions of dollars to fund that research, and to help children get access to other therapies globally that they may not otherwise have access here to in the United States. So that is specifically what Saving Sophie is for, to write checks to parents and their children to help them get access to therapies like ours specifically that my daughter has been a beneficiary of, and to advance science that helps in pediatric cancer research. So again, thank you so much for your generous donation.
You're welcome. That's excellent. Yeah. And Tracy, we met shortly after you appeared on a webinar panel for allogeneic NK cell innovations last September. And one of the reasons I really wanted to have this conversation is that this is not abstract for either one of us. We're both parents who've had to learn a language in healthcare that we didn't want to have to learn, right? You with Sophie, me with Tyler, and dealing with different types of brain tumors. So I want to start with Sophie, who's been fighting cancer since infancy. Before there was NKore BioTherapeutics, or your expertise in the science of NK cell therapies, there was your daughter.
Right.
And when you look at her now, what makes you most proud of Sophie?
Oh, her resilience. That is such an easy question to answer. My child has been through more than most people would go through in 5 lifetimes. She did 7 years of chemotherapy. She failed 8 different protocols. She's about to have her 13th surgery, 6 on her brain. She's legally blind with a left-hand side weakness. But I literally call her the mayor of planet Earth. The child knows no stranger. I've never been so impressed with a human being as I am with my daughter and her ability to spread joy and love and hope to literally everyone who comes within 5 feet of her. We were just in Cancun this week getting her fifth natural killer cell infusion that my company has manufactured and produced down there. And we left that hotel knowing pretty much everyone there. And in the airport, even coming home, there was these two women that we met. And the woman, as she was getting off the plane, she was being picked up by a wheelchair. She looked at my daughter and she said, I just want to thank you so much for bringing so much joy to my day when I was otherwise a little bit down. And this is what she does every day of her life, whether we're going to the mall or out to an event or we're traveling. She speaks to everyone that crosses her path. And it's not just her saying hi. She's saying, hi, sweetheart. Hi, my love. Hello, sunshine. Hi, beautiful. How are you today, gorgeous? She just makes everyone feel so seen. And I consider myself a very outgoing person, but when I don't have my daughter with me, I actually feel shy because I meet so few people compared to her. I mean, you think about how we just walk through life every day and we don't say hi to strangers. We don't ask them how their day is that often. But when I'm with my daughter, I get exposed to the world around me that I never otherwise would have been exposed to. So I'm just so incredibly proud to be her mother. And I'm so excited to say that cancer did not steal her sparkle.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is. Both of us are just smiling ear to ear because to have a kid who is going everything that she has gone through, and she just has this spirit of joy that she spreads to everybody. I mean, if we all just had a tenth of that, it'd be a happier world, right?
Yeah. This world would be so very different, especially with everything that we have going on right now. We're constantly surrounded by things that are very scary for us. And if anything, I'll be honest, it's made me recoil more than be out more because I'm constantly looking over my shoulder and worrying about, what shoe is about to drop next. But with Sophie, she's legally blind. So she also doesn't see skin color. She doesn't see facial features. She doesn't see how people dress. She can't tell the difference between somebody who looks like they're rolling in money versus somebody who may be close to homelessness. She just sees the soul. She sees the energy. She hears the voice. She hears their response to her interactions. And if all of us could take just a tiny little note out of her notebook, the world that we live in would be a far, far, far different place.
Be a far better place.
It would be a much better place. Absolutely. We'd all be a whole lot nicer.
I'm going to try to take a note out of her notebook and keep that in mind, right? For
yes,
the next,
indeed.
And just, remember that. Spread joy.
You just never know what something
it's amazing.
Through. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times people have reached out to me on social media and told me I was suicidal. I wanted to end my life. I did not believe there was a place on this planet left for me anymore. And then I saw your daughter overcome with joy and happiness and a smile on her face. And I have lived now to see another day. If we could all just inspire one person a day and then they see that forward, the trickle down effect of that is so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It is, especially to those who haven't heard a kind word in a while. It goes a very long ways.
It really does. It can change somebody's entire life.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tracy, you and we talked privately about how brain tumors can force parents to become part advocates, part researcher, part protector. What changed most in you as a mother once you realized you couldn't just hand this over to the system and trust it blindly?
Well, when Sophie was first diagnosed, what was the most earth-shattering and shocking for me was that at the time, only 3.8% of all government funding was going to advance pediatric cancer research. And that number just did not make sense to me at all. Then I found out that there's so few trials actually going on children because the population is also so small that investors don't want to put their money into companies that are doing trials on pediatrics because they're never going to recoup their expenses because it is so grossly expensive to get a drug to market. Just to get to an IND application process, to get through that process and to get into, and for the audience out there that maybe isn't as technical as we are, it stands for investigational new drug. And this is the application that you have to file with the FDA for your therapy or your drug in order to get approval to then treat those patients in a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trial. That first phase alone, just getting into that, is at least $10 million. And that's after you've spent millions of dollars developing the asset in the clinical space. So the fact that we had only 3.8% of the government helping with that funding, and the population was so small, so to recoup that money was just almost impossible. I learned that only 4 new drugs had been brought to market in the last 40 years when my daughter was diagnosed, and I was shook. I was absolutely shook. I knew right then and there that I had to do something more because my daughter's brain tumor is, by diagnosis, survivable. It's a 90 to 95% survival rate, but it's an 85% recurrence rate. So these kids can be in chemotherapy rarely for a year, rarely. It's often for 3 to 15 years that these kids are in treatment. And then throughout these treatments, I mean, they're getting the same kind of chemotherapies as someone with a stage 4 terminal glioblastoma. Timidar is in the line of treatments that you give both of these cancers. The horrific nature of these medicines that are given to these kids are just as beastly as somebody who's only going to go through 13 months of chemotherapy. So the fact that it's survivable, okay, sure, most of these kids live, but how are they living after they actually beat the disease? What is happening from a long-term standpoint in these children? I mean, right before we logged on, we were talking about how Sophie just got out of the hospital for ascites and for gut motility issues, where they had to drain 3 liters of fluid off of my 4'9", 82-pound little girl. 3 liters. Now imagine carrying a gallon of milk around on your belly and how uncomfortable that is. And that is all from long-term chemo issues. And now a VP shunt from 6 brain surgeries that were blocking the vessels that absorb the brain fluid in the brain that then repositions it into the body. So she may be living, she may be alive, but the acid reflux, the ulcers, the gut motility, the CSF hydrocephalus issues on her brain, the vision loss from all the brain surgeries, the left-hand side weakness. I mean, she's telling me on a regular basis, Mom, I love my life, but I'm in a broken body. And I don't like being in a broken body. I want my body to be. I want to be a normal kid. I want to be able to swim in the pool like everybody else. I want to be able to run. She's in a wheelchair all day, every day now because her left-hand side is so bad. She has to have a foot surgery in July where they're going to have to break all the bones in her ankle and fuse them straight because she cannot walk properly. And this is all from this tumor that nobody's really care about it because it's survival. But what kind of survival are we really giving these children? And that is where I decided I had to do something more, not just for my kid, but for all the patients standing behind her. And that's when I took action, was really pretty much right away.
Yeah.
Wow. And so Sophie and your family, how old is she, by the way?
She's 13 now, full-blown teenager.
Now. Okay.
About to be 13 and a half. Her half birthday is April 3rd. So I'm sure we'll be celebrating the half birthday as well.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Nice. And so she and your family was featured in the documentary Weed the People.
Correct.
And what hit me wasn't just the cannabis question, but the desperation and the responsibility parents feel when the usual playbook doesn't feel sufficient, right? And looking back now, what do you think that chapter taught you about courage and trying different therapies?
You know, I really am so incredibly grateful for the documentary, for Netflix, for having it on their streamer for 5 years. It's now also on Prime, Apple TV, and Gaia, and to Ricky Lake and Abby Epstein, who produced this documentary, who gave us this platform to really speak out about a plant that has been so demonized for decades now. And what I have learned since then about plant medicine and its viability in it truly being a real potential to help with disease and disease reversal has been one of the most incredible gifts I've ever been given. I've also been able to use my understanding of this plant and how it works to reboot the natural killer cells, which are the main drivers of your immune system. They're the generals in the marching army that tell all the other immune cells what to do, where to go. They identify the enemy, they recruit the team, and then they actively kill as a whole. And knowing that cannabinoids have the ability to reboot broken natural killer cells to then go in and help fight disease where disease is giving rise. How are we not using this plant more? Why are we being blocked from it? And I'll tell you what I have come to learn is that it is too good. It helps with too much and it does too many things and it's accessible to all. It will replace so many different medications and actually had replaced many medications. And if you watch the documentary, one of the things that you'll learn was that William Randolph Hearst and Harry Anslinger was a politician. William Randolph Hearst owned Hearst Castle, Hearst Publication. They got together and they decided they wanted to demonize this plant for multiple reasons. Hearst, because he wanted tree farms. He made, his millions and millions and millions of dollars, which would probably be equal to closer to billions in this day and age from tree farms. He didn't want hemp paper coming in and replacing this. And Anslinger wanted something to help boost and bolster his political career. So he started calling cannabis marijuana, or the crazy weed. And they used William Randolph Hearst publications to create what was called yellow journalism, where they were publishing that this wacky weed would make you sleep with jazz musicians and kill your brother, which is like a couple of these weird random things that they were, this fake news, if you will, that they were pushing out to the public to let them know that this plant was not good. The American Medical Association actually came out in court and said, if you take this plant away from us, we do not have medications in which to replace it with. Cannabis was used at one point for childbirth, gentlemen, literally for childbirth and for pain. Wow. It was the alcohol tinctures that were illegal to use in the scientific labs in the days when they were actually researching this plant. There have been more publications on cannabis than any other plant in the world, yet many of them have been stripped from existence and cannot be found anymore. A mother's breast milk has cannabinoids, endocannabinoids in it that are almost identical to that from the plant. They are so rich in nutritional value and the ability to boost immune function. We studied 27 humans at UCLA when I had my company CannaKids, and CannaKids was a medical tincture line that came to be after we were filming the documentary. We saw this vacuum in the market specifically for pediatrics with cancer, autism, and epilepsy. Those were our big three. And we had special custom formulations that we used for these children that I saw do things that had I not witnessed it with my own eyes, I would not have believed that medicines today were not capable of doing. When I met Dr. Jewett, Dr. Anahid Jewett, who is the inventor of the technology that I am pioneering today and working to get into the clinics, she became very fascinated with Sophie's overall case. Sophie was a medical miracle more times than any doctor could count. She became one of the more well-known children globally for her use of this plant. And I was doing about 70 speaking engagements a year advocating for the use of this in both pediatrics and adults. We studied 27 of my patients that ranged from pediatrics to the elderly. They all had cancer. They were all in varying stages of disease, all different types of disease, and in varying stages of cannabis use. Some had never used it. Some had been on it for a while. Some had been on it for very long term and were terminal patients that had been not cured, but their cancer was gone using the plant, and in some cases, the plant alone. And what we found, we reverse engineered those findings into humanized mice and published to a top cancer journal, in fact, proving that cannabinoids have the ability to repair broken natural killer cells, again, the generals in the marching army of your immune system. And in the mice, we proved that they have the ability to kill cancer stem cells, the seeds to cancer that chemo and radiation can't even see, and from which recurrence gives rise. So we showed that this is a preventative. We showed that it is an immune booster. We showed that it has the potential to eradicate cancer cells and cancer stem cells. And to this day, we are still living in a country where it is still a Schedule I narcotic, and it is still deemed more dangerous for us than cocaine. Yet CBD on its own isn't even addictive because you don't get high from it. Yet it's still on the schedule. THC does make you psychoactive, but when used properly and with guided care, you can actually use it to get to very high doses without the psychoactivity because the body builds up tolerance to it. We also know, based on science and literature, that caffeine and chocolate are more addictive than cannabis, especially alcohol and cigarettes. But yet somehow none of those things are on the schedule. So it's been a real eye-opening experience to become aware of the immense medical benefits this plant holds, and to still be in a place 13 years later where we're just as limited in its use today almost as we were back then. There are some more things that have opened up. Some states are using it more easily than others, but there are still states out there that criminalize this plant and will put you in jail for the use of it, even if it's medicinal.
It's crazy. My uncle, he had stage 4 cancer, and he was at the palliative care stage at that point. And he tried several different painkillers, and either they didn't work or they gave him side effects that just were not very tolerable.
Yeah.
But the medical marijuana took care of all that. It actually helped him be comfortable. It helped him sleep. And those are things that are just overlooked because of this negative propaganda that's out there.
Well, and if you look at the war vet community, I have gotten war vets off of 30 medications, Gregory. 30. They're blocking bad memories. They're blocking these PTSD events that they're having, these flashbacks that occur. They're limiting the need for heavy narcotics. I had a vet that literally couldn't even drive into the parking lot of a concert. When I was done with him, he was front row at U2 in the pit, living.
Nice.
Well, and then imagine if we could do proper research and could actually purify the components and look at which components truly are making the difference, and and we could control the dose and have a very, have an even safer and more targeted, probably, dozens of therapies with the different, the many different forms of the cannabinoids that are in it. So yeah, it's really a shame.
Epidiolex and Sativex are CBD medications that are being used in children with epilepsy. My daughter's hospital, Children's Hospital Los Angeles, that we've been at for 13 years now, they have more children there on that plant than any other hospital in the country. And we believe we played a significant role in opening that hospital's mind to the usage of this plant because we were treating so many patients that were being seen there. We've had kids that were in induced comas. Their seizures were so bad, it was killing them. They got on the right strain, the right dose, and they didn't have a single seizure. They just went away. And the medications for epilepsy are very addictive and come with side effects on that.
It's just crazy that we even have to talk about being on the right strain, right? Because again, if you could just purify it, test it, understand what each of the key components are, and test them each individually, and then you would know exactly what the right combination of the right chemicals is versus does Hindu Kush or whatever, right? whatever one it is, or Starlight Night, or I mean, we could go on and on, right? I think the documentary said there's 4,500 strains, and
wow,
and more all the time because they're crossbreeding, cross-pollinate.
Sure.
So they're always coming up with these new profiles. We had our own specific profiles that we had developed, and what we saw with autism, gentlemen, would blow your absolute mind. Children that had never spoken a word within 2 weeks were saying their first word. Kids with incontinence was going away. There was a little boy who had latched on to a little girl's face at school and wouldn't let go from autistic rage. They banned him from coming to school. Once we got him on our then autism protocol, all of his rage went away. He was allowed to come back to school. He was a model student, and he has thrived ever since. He still has autism, but he is a happy young man now. He's doing well and advancing life versus the other.
Yeah. So what's becoming your THC company as you've shifted towards the NKore?
I had to sell it, sadly, because
sold it. Okay. So
I had to sell Canakids. I sold Canakids in 2020, right in that, right in COVID, like February of 2020, right when it was all starting to kick up and get crazy. I was not going to be able to license the patents for the natural killer cell immunotherapy that we have now from UCLA while owning a federally illegal company, which is quite bad. But I knew that natural killer cells had the ability to more permanently fix the immune system, whereas although cannabis is amazing, my cancer patients, if they stop taking it, their NK cells would go back to a broken state and the cancer could come back. So cannabis is a daily, forever medication. It is not something that you can take for a few weeks or a few months and then the disease is gone and it never comes back and you never have to worry about it again. It is something that you have to do daily. Whereas when I'm using natural killer cells, these cells are showing a far, far, far longer lifespan. We've got patients that are 2.5 years out that are still seeing immune system restoration by retraining their own immune cells using our donor cells. So this was something that, believe it or not, was going to be easier to bring to market because of, and despite immunotherapy being very difficult to get to market as a whole, it was going to be far easier than cannabis because how is it going to do that? Like the cannabis that they make available out of the University of Mississippi to people who actually are finally able to get a Schedule I narcotic license is garbage. It is full of mold, sticks, stems. I literally would not feed it to an animal, especially a beloved one. It is horrific. It does not represent the real world cannabis that's out there today. And then how am I going to ever have enough of it to actually make a therapy? They have it set up, and I haven't looked into this in a while. Maybe it's changed a little, but even if you got through the overall, preliminary phases of a clinical trial using the University of Mississippi cannabis, I actually do call that stuff weed because it's not medicinal, with no way to actually then have enough of it and get access enough of it to make a medicine. So when GW Pharmaceutical created Sativex and Epidiolex, they were growing football fields of this stuff. We actually have a synthetic cannabinoid that my scientist was developing that we were adjusting some of the arms of the molecule on to make it more potent and more robust. We have not carried on that research. My scientist sadly passed away last year, but as we have more funding come in and as the company grows, that is something that I want to continue to pursue. We believe that cannabis is a brilliant adjunct to the natural killer cell treatment that we have. And in fact, my daughter still takes cannabis today.
This episode is brought to you by our founding sponsor, Leucentra, inspired by science, empowered by IT. Leucentra provides IT consulting for life science and healthcare organizations, helping teams modernize infrastructure, strengthen security, and build scalable technology environments that support scientific innovation. I know John Lord. He's the founder of Leucentra. He's a great guy, very experienced, very authentic professional, and just a good guy to work with that you can count on.
So you mentioned that a lot of patients now get access to cannabinoid treatments at LA Children's Hospital, which is a good segue into our next segment, Bio News.
Bio News.
Bio News.
A new report in Marijuana Moment that published February 27th, 2026, entitled Bills to Let Patients Use Medical Marijuana in Hospitals are advancing in states across the U.S. So it says that several states are advancing versions of what's called Ryan's Law, which would allow seriously ill or terminal patients to use medical cannabis in hospitals or other care facilities. The core issue is about dignity, symptom relief, and whether patients will lose access to something that helps them the minute they are admitted. So, Tracy, when you see these, hospital access bills moving, do you view that mainly as a cannabis policy story or fundamentally as a patient's rights into life dignity story for families who may already know what helps their child or loved one?
I mean, honestly, it's both. And Ryan's Law is a law that I've been supporting for a very long time now. I've done quite a bit of advocacy work for those guys in the past. I mean, this is it's a human rights issue first and foremost, which is why our documentary was called Weed the People instead of We the People. Because I know, right? This crazy little play on words they came up with that I thought was super cute. But this is a human rights issue. This is a plant that was put on this earth for us. God gave us these magical natural elements to help heal our body. I believe that there are cures out there for everything that either our own body makes, like natural killer cells, or plant medicine of some sort that can help with all of these different issues, from mental health to immune-related issues, cancer being a big one there. And I believe that it is a patient's right to use something, especially if it's natural, that we know isn't going to kill you. I mean, how many people do you know of that have ever died from cannabis usage? Like, it's impossible to take too much. You can get real uncomfortable real fast if you're not careful. So be careful with your cannabis usage, but people don't die from overconsumption of this plant. And when we already know so much about the pain alleviation that this plant provides, the ability to mitigate nausea, stimulate appetite, boost immune function, the science is there. And anybody who says it isn't hasn't been paying attention, and they absolutely have not been reading the publications. So every patient has a right to die with dignity. Every patient should have a human right to access things that they believe can truly be beneficial to them, and that there is so much science and anecdotal evidence to support. And everyone has the right to be comfortable in their especially in their end of life days. I can't even begin to describe how many people I've worked with end of life, and some of the beautiful letters that I have gotten from the family. This one woman in specific has always really stuck out to me. She sent me this gorgeous handwritten letter where her mother passed away. We never expected her to survive. It was a horrible disease that she was battling. It wasn't something she was going to come back from, but she was in absolute excruciating pain. If we have a dog that's sick and it's dying and is injured and isn't going to recover, we let that dog die with dignity. We let our fur babies, our friendly family fur babies, die with dignity. We put them out of their misery. We allow them the grace of a quick passing, and we take away their suffering, whereas human beings don't have that right. I mean, in California, it's a bit different. We have end of life laws here that allow you to take that upon yourself to end your life if you so choose, but most places do not. And to make someone suffer such extreme, horrific pain and make them suffer through those final days until their final passing, when there are things out there that can help, I think it's criminal that more isn't done, to be honest with you. And I really hope that that this law does continue to move forward and that it gets adopted nationwide. I have watched cannabis take away pain from people who literally could not sit still. They were and morphine and all these other horrific, highly addictive with horrific side effects. They stop working, guys. At some point, they stop working. And then when you have to start taking so much of it because it stopped working, then it makes your breathing slow down. It in itself can kill you. And when you get to that point in end of life stage care, it is often the very opioids that cause the end of life, not the disease itself, because the patient is so desperate to mitigate pain. Yeah. Cannabis doesn't do that.
Wow. That's fascinating. And you said that cannabis was, it's powerful, and we've talked a lot about that, but ultimately not enough from a curative standpoint, and it helped lead you into things we've already been talking about a little bit and alluding to, is the immunotherapy, because you wanted something more durable, right? So what was the moment when your mind shifted from adjunctive help to we may need to repair the immune system itself?
Well, I originally was partnered with the Technion Institute in Israel and Dr. Dedi Meiri, who is a world-renowned cannabis research scientist who's also studied autism and epilepsy, and he's just a brilliant, brilliant man. He was part of our documentary. I had raised several $1 million to advance research there. specifically because I was trying to figure out what we needed to do differently with my daughter. Despite it mitigating her seizures, boosting her immune system, she was one of those kids that with her chemo protocol, she would do 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Most kids on week 5, they have to come back and get their blood work checked to make sure their counts are recovering. Sophie was the only kid in the entire clinic that didn't have to come back that 5th week because her counts weren't dropping like everybody else's. She was coming out of brain surgeries with no bruising and swelling. And the doctors were like, we've never seen this before. What is happening? Why does your child not have injuries to her face? All of these are vision. She was supposed to be completely blind the first year of life. And we maintained a lot of her vision for many, many, many years. It was the brain surgeries where they took out optic fibers because her tumor wraps around the optic nerves that caused a lot of her vision loss that she endures today, even though it is getting better from time to time. Sophie had all of these incredible benefits, and we knew that we wanted to do something more. But the problem was the tumor kept growing and kept coming back. Hence the 7 years of chemotherapy. She had all of these miracles that were happening, but the disease wasn't stabilizing. So that is where the research in Israel took place. I ended up flying Sophie's brain tissue to Israel in this little box, and it was dead tissue, sadly. So they weren't able to use it to grow it into mice, but they were going to try and use CRISPR technology to recreate the tumor and then grow that into mice. But sadly, they were not successful there. So low-grade brain tumors are very difficult to grow, and they couldn't get all the components of it, and it just didn't work out. So although the funding that I raised helped exponentially advance cannabis science as we know it for both children and adults, it didn't help my daughter. So I was still on this natural path to try and do more, to figure out what I needed to do to stop this relentless tumor. Sophie ended up needing another brain surgery. So I was going to have access to live tissue that I could get into a mouse model that I could then fly to Israel and say, here you go, test away. Let's look at all the different strains, all the different combinations of strains, and let's figure out how to get this little girl better so we can get her off all this awful chemo. Well, the scientist, again, Dr. Jewett, who ended up being my business partner, was the one who agreed to do this work. And she said, Tracy, I'm more than happy to donate these mice to you. These were humanized mice, $2,500 a piece. And she was just going to give them to me. Going to do all the work for free. She was very impressed with the efforts that I had taken, the patients I'd been treating, the stories that I had. And she said, the only caveat is that I want to test your daughter's immune system. What you're telling me about what this plan is doing is very fascinating. Cannabis has never been on my radar. I've never studied brain cancer. I've never studied children. My heart is too sensitive for kids, but I want to help you. So while I'm in the process of getting everything lined up to get this live tissue for her, she ends up testing Sophie's immune system. And she calls me up one day and she was like, Tracy, I don't know what to tell you, but I have some very interesting findings. And I'm like, oh God, the shoe's about to drop. How bad is it? What's wrong? She goes, no. Nothing's wrong. I don't understand what I'm seeing in your daughter's blood. Her immune function is that of a healthy adult, but she's a child. So she had an immature immune system. She's on all these chemotherapies and she has a brain tumor. Her cells should be wildly malfunctioned, but yet they're functioning beautifully and their killing ability is there. So I don't know why this tumor is in her brain. I need to understand more. I need to treat more patients. Or I need to study more patients. I need fluid from your daughter's brain if there's ever a chance to get it. So crazy enough, after this brain surgery, they debulked the disease, but they did this surgery in a very strange way to where it didn't really make a lot of sense. They just left kind of this big open hole in there, and a very, very tiny opening, and the opening closed and fluid started building up in that pocket. And it started pooling out the side of her face. The cyst was getting so big, so we had to drain it. So that gave us access to brain fluid.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is where the discovery came in. Sophie, from the neck down, had extremely high functioning and very well functioning natural killer cells. In her brain, she had 0. What we came to learn after studying these 27 humans and then reverse engineering these findings into mice was that cannabinoids were boosting the natural killer cells. The natural killer cells were then recruiting the immune cells, bringing them in and telling them where to kill. Well, if there's no NK cells to boost, then the T cells are only going to do so much and the other immune cells are only going to do so much. And those NK cells just weren't present. So that is when I believed I had found the woman that not only figured out why my daughter has cancer, but had the therapy that could potentially fix this core problem. That is when I sold off my equity in the Technion deal, and I started putting all of my focus into Dr. Jewett and into helping her get this therapy to market. She had met a lot of people over the years that were very passionate about what she was doing, but she told me, she was like, I never really found the person that I thought would do this treatment justice and would truly love it the way that I do. Now I think you're that person. Let's get to work. So that's when I started raising capital. I started negotiating for the patents with UCLA, bringing in a team to help me with those negotiations. That ended up being my first CEO. And now here we are 7 years later. We've treated 9 humans. We've given 24 infusions as of Tuesday. So we got the 24th. And we have treated glioblastoma, stage 4 breast cancer that's metastatic, testicular leukemia, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, lymphoma, and prostate cancer. And what we have seen are no adverse reactions of any kind, no negative side effects. In fact, if the patients show up, because we will use this as either a monotherapy or a combinational therapy. We'll either use it alone or we'll use it in combination with the patient's standard of care protocol. Because like, for example, glioblastoma, that is a very, very aggressive, very deadly, very dangerous disease. This is a new therapy. It's newly in human beings. We do not want to put anyone at risk. We just want to bolster what they're already doing while also working to repair the immune system they need to fight that disease in the first place and stay alive. Because guess what? The chemo and the radiation are going to further debilitate the very NK cells you need to stay alive and thrive. So what we have seen thus far is very exciting reversal of disease states in the stage 4 breast cancer, in the chronic lymphocytic leukemia, the testicular cancer. After the first scan, all of the disease in the testes was gone. My daughter's brain tumor looks like somebody shot a shotgun through it, and her tumor did not shrink in 5 years on as many as 4 chemotherapies at once. Her very first scan, post her 2 infusions last summer, literally the whole center of it's black. And the whole thing is like peppered all throughout it. She just got another infusion Tuesday, so we're very excited about the scans that are coming. And these patients feel incredible. We're seeing the immune system be restored, and we're seeing the secretion of what's called interferon gamma, which is what is used in cancer killing. We're seeing those levels skyrocket. So we have some very early promising results in therapy that is not causing the patients to get sicker. It's helping to fix the core reason why they got cancer in the first place.
Well, and that's really exciting. The NKore technology, so the supercharged NK cells, I when I was, kind of doing my homework on this, and, when I was comparing them with I'd say more popular CAR NK cells, where the chimeric antigen receptor NK cells, those are very targeted towards certain types of cancer cells. And then the supercharged NK, I was really fascinated by that because they're less specific. They're specific to find sick cells, and so it goes out there and they find sick cells. But that's where it's really exciting because it can hit so many different kinds of cancer, and genetically engineered cells really scare people, which is what the CAR NK cells are. I'm a believer in, the safety with treatments done right, but the supercharged NK cells, I think, I just want to, since I brought up genetically engineered, they are not genetically engineered. They're supercharged, right? With some cytokines, right? I mean, to supercharge them, and, it's like revving up the engine so they can, go after any bad cells in the body, any bad cancer cells in the body. I mean, it's really cool. It's not a space that I had, really dove into until we were prepping for this. So, it's one of the reasons I love doing these discussions, because I learn so much and hear these inspiring stories. So,
a CAR NK is very Frankenstein, right? So is it really a natural killer cell?
Yep. Yeah.
All these things to it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What we're doing
Yeah.
is we're using osteoclast, which is a cell made from the bone. And we use monocytes from the whole blood and we force those into osteoclast. And then we use 9 different strains of a very special combination of probiotic bacteria. What we're
Okay.
seeing is, and we're using allogeneic natural killer cells, meaning from a healthy donor. We're taking NK cells from people who are what we call super donors. So their NK cell function is at the height of performance. A typical normal person who's healthy, like 3 of us, would have 5 to 15% of our white blood cells, they would be NK cells. The patient, the donors that we're using, their NK cell percentages range from 25 to 35% naturally. My husband's actually one of those donors. My doctor is getting well using my osteoclast that is supercharging my husband's NK cells. I'm about to be 51 in what's the day? In like 13 days or 14 days, I'll be 51. My husband's going to be 52 July 5th. You traditionally get donors who are in their early 20s and male. Guess what my husband and I use every day for immune boosting? Medical cannabis.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our cells as a combination have been the best combination we've seen to date. And we are the oldest people in the donor pool. So I'm actually a big proponent of donors, blood donor banks, looking more at cannabis patients to see if there isn't truly something there that we're missing.
Instead of excluding, including.
Yeah. Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And
fantastic.
Why about their cannabis usage on these donor forms? Because they're afraid it's going to rule them out. This could be something that could help rule them in the future. But what we believe is happening with our cells is not only are we starting with very high performing cells, but the supercharged NK, where the NK cells are eating the osteoclast and the probiotic bacteria, gobbling it all up, and they're adopting that aggressive nature of the osteoclast. And the probiotic bacteria is acting as a superfood to boost them. And what we are seeing is incredible persistence in how these cells behave. We believe our cells are staying in the human immune system for about 25 to 30 days. That's why our patients get an infusion every 28 days or 3 infusions. We then are seeing the patient's own immune cells take over. And as I believe I mentioned earlier, we have patients 2.5 years out who originally came to us with 2% malfunctioned NK cells who are now staying steady at 17% high function NK cells. And so the longevity of the performance of the cells in our patients and our early patients that we've treated the longest, and again, it's only like a couple of people that we have a long readout on, but we're seeing that persistence. And that's where all these other companies are failing, is the lack of persistence.
Okay. And you're doing this research in Mexico. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the, why Mexico, why it's working down there? What's different about the regulations that allows you to do that?
Sure. So in Mexico, they see cell therapy more like we see tissue in the United States. You don't have to get IND approval with COFEPRIS in Cancun, which is their version of the FDA, in order to treat humans. You need GMP manufacturing, which the group that we have partnered with down there has, and you need an infusion center that has the proper licensure that allows them to treat patients with cell therapy. And the team we have there have been in this space for over 15 years. They'd already been collaborating with our scientist, Dr. Anahid Jewett, and they are wildly respected in the field, and even have their own cells, both NK cells and dendritic cells, that they're putting into human trials here in the United States. So a really wonderful group of people that are highly educated in this space that we've worked brilliantly alongside. And it was an easier path to get early human data when we are in a field that truly requires human data to raise those millions and millions of dollars. I remember when we were first doing this, we had a pitch with one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies on the planet. And they were like, we love your preclinical data that you have in your humanized mouse models, but we need human data to give you the money. More like, but we need the money to get the data. So it's kind of like the chicken or the egg scenario, trying to get the money into the humans, It's hard because they want to see the humans before they give you the money to actually move the company forward. So this was a way for us to provide an option to patients now, my daughter being one of them that needed it. It allowed us to de-risk the company from a data standpoint so that we could more easily raise capital, even though it has not been easy over the last year plus.
Yeah.
The field is a
Indeed.
mess. Raising capital is literally the hardest hurdle we're trying to overcome right now. But they just don't have the same regulatory hurdles with a therapy that doesn't cause side effects, which is really frustrating. That we've got this treatment now that we've administered over and over and over and over and over and over again in multiple different types of diseases, all in the cancer category, in both the young and in middle-aged elderly. But we're still going to have to spend that $10 million. We're still going to have to go through those phase 1 safety trials and all the other trials that are subsequent to that. And we're still going to have to raise hundreds of millions of dollars essentially to get this to the people. Whereas if this were Mexico and the United States, we'd be popping up clinics everywhere and people would have access now.
Wow. And so for the NK donors that you mentioned, you're looking for the best NK cells within the individual that you can get, right? That you can harvest, but it's universal, right? Is there any other matching process you have to do?
We do HLA type. We don't need HLA typing. We do those markers just so that we know what the typing is. But a mismatch with natural killer cells is actually better than a perfect match. So we can have one donor for any patient, essentially, and we're not seeing any issues with repeating that donor. Whereas with a lot of other immunotherapies, you wouldn't use the same donor dose after dose after dose. You would use a different donor so that there's not these situations
response
coming into it and recognizing it and not responding. So we haven't had those problems thus far, which is also very exciting because it makes the manufacturing process easier, more affordable, and faster. It gives us a true off-the-shelf therapy so we can have doses in cryopreserve in the cryo tanks that we can just thaw and go. And that's what we've been doing. We've been manufacturing, we've been cryopreserving. The patient shows up, they thaw on the day, they drive the cells right over and infuse. And what's great is there's also no lymphodepletion. There's no wiping out immune system prior to the dose, which a lot of therapies are also requiring. So there's no toxicity prior to or after the infusion itself. The only thing a patient is getting is a dose of Benadryl just to relax them and as a prophylactic. Not that they need it because we've never seen an allergy of any kind, but why not? It's Benadryl.
Yeah. And one thing we talked about earlier that stood out to me was this tolerability that you've just been talking about, that there's no side effects. And to me, what's really interesting, there's no lymphodepletion either, as in typical CAR T protocols, right? Where basically we're emptying your immune system and starting it at zero to put in a different type of immune system. It's just adding to it and reprogramming naturally from within, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so in addition to that, how much of your design, because you just mentioned Benadryl as a prophylactic, is shaped not just by the tumor biologics, but by what it feels like to be a patient or a parent that's in the chair?
I mean, so much of it. This is the whole reason I wanted to wrap my arms around this therapy is because I watched my daughter suffer unimaginably for 7 solid years. The vomiting, the diarrhea, the hair loss. I can't even tell you for how many years I could see her rib cage and her spine because she was so skinny. The seizure activity that was happening, because of what was going on with the brain tumor and just the lack of quality medication out there to stop these diseases, especially in kids. It's heartbreaking when you get that diagnosis, you've got cancer, you crumble, your family crumbles, your community that loves you crumbles, and everyone is living in fear until you know whether or not that treatment is going to work for you and whether or not you're going to survive. So for me as a parent, first and foremost, it has been the greatest blessing and honor of my life to find Dr. Jewett and to understand that there are things that are better, that are out there, that are coming, which is why I have to be successful at raising capital. I cannot let this company die because we were in this really, really awful fundraising environment, and biotech is just in general kind of under attack. This is such a gift to the world that I want to help usher in, because I know what it's like. I know how hard it is. It takes everything from you. I will never know what it's like to truly raise a child that's normal, and that, like, we didn't get to grow up on the playgrounds. We didn't get to go to the birthday parties. We don't get invited out on play dates. My daughter can't go and have an overnight with a friend because she has 7 medications she takes a day, and she's legally blind, and she could fall and hurt herself. And she's got all of these needs, just wear a splint every night. It has to be stretched. And like, we don't get to do the things that everybody else gets to do. We have to wear masks on airplanes because we don't want her to get sick. I mean, her immune system is good. It's good right now. But nonetheless, it's just, you're constantly living in fear. You're always waiting for the other.
Yeah, a normal illness would be, that anybody could get would be devastating. Could be devastating. Yeah.
So for this, really for me, it's about the patients first. It's about giving people, my goal in life is to make cancer a word that is not terrifying anymore. It is a manageable disease that can be handled with care, and that can be treated in ways that don't just absolutely destroy your life as you know it. That really truly is what I want to do for the world.
That's awesome. And I hope that this is the answer, and it certainly can be. But as you said, it's been a very painfully difficult fundraising season for more than a couple of years now. It's I can't imagine how difficult that is, especially when you have something that works and that's not going to hurt people in the process. Right? I
mean, if we were 3 or 4 years ago and we had all this biomarker data and the humans that we've treated, and the scans that we're getting, and the blood work that we're seeing, and I mean, our patient that has glioblastoma was going from, well, he doesn't have it anymore. His tumor was resected 13 months ago. The median time for recurrence is 8 to 12 months. He's 13 months in. His brain looks normal. It looks normal. And now when he takes his Temodar, he went from 3 to 5 days of just feeling horrific to a half a day of just kind of feeling and then he's fine. I mean, can you imagine a world where you get diagnosed with a deadly stage 4 brain cancer and it's not so scary anymore, and you're just not as sick as you otherwise would be? People deserve to have access to this, and they deserve to have access to it now. The waiting game is the most painful. The fundraising game and the waiting game, those are the 2 games that I wish I didn't have to play.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah. So there's parents listening to this who may not be building a biotech company like this guy, but they're living in fear, confusion, information overload that you and I both have been through. What would you say to that mother or father who feels they have had to become an expert overnight just to protect their child?
Oh, my heart's with you. It truly, truly is. I understand how overwhelming this disease is. I understand the burden that it puts on the family, especially the child, and what it does to the child, and what it does to their psyche, and like their outlook on life, and how they interact in the world, and their prospects for friendships, and my daughter is still at a 1st and 2nd grade math level because she has so much brain damage in the area that computes math. And that affects you when you can't remember 5 + 5 = 10. You're 13 years old. Hang in there. Keep fighting. Better things are coming. The one thing I do have to preface is that sadly, my daughter is the only pediatric patient that we can treat in Mexico right now. They're only okay with treating her because I own the company and they know I'm not going to sue. And children are much more difficult. They're riskier, sadly, because it's a kid. But the team there has informed me that they are now working with the higher ups in Mexico to try and open this up more eloquently for pediatric patients. So it's going to take some time. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. But that process is starting. And just know that you have people like me out there fighting for you every second of every day. I'm all brakes. I mean, all gas, no brakes. I almost said it wrong. I'm all gas, no brakes. I have 2 speeds, fast and sleep. And I will not stop until I have gotten the medical community to a place where children are treated better and that parents don't have to live in so much fear that their little baby is going to succumb to a medication before they even succumb to the disease.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's great. I love your passion. I love your energy behind this. It clearly drives you, and I totally understand it, having gone through low-grade glioma with my kiddo, who has fortunately had not had to deal with half the stuff that you and Sophie have been through.
Yeah.
Chad, do you have other questions at this time?
No, I'm just inspired.
Okay.
This has been fantastic. I really appreciated, learning so much from you and so many thought-provoking comments. Just incredible. Yeah. Really
Well,
great takeaway.
Yes.
I really appreciate you giving me a platform to continue to spread this message and to advocate for more. I mean, it takes a village, and I am standing on the shoulders of hundreds of thousands of people that came before me that allowed for these pathways to be created. There's a lot of new voucher programs that are coming out that could help with fast tracks, with access to capital that can help me get into children faster, and to help the adults out there that are suffering as well. I mean, we're clearly going to go into adult populations first in the U.S. because that's path of least resistance. But it is my goal to pivot to children as fast as humanly possible. And, we all have to keep growing in the same direction in order to cross that finish line and finally get patients the care they deserve and to remove the fear that otherwise is just all consuming.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad we got to do this and have this conversation that we can share with our audience and with the world. How can people best reach you if they have questions or follow-ups? And what are some of the best resources that I can add to the show notes for the audience?
Sure. So if you go to our website, www.nkore.com, that's NKore.com. I'm also on LinkedIn under Tracy Ryan. Pretty easy to find. You can find our socials as well. My daughter's is Prayers for Sophie, Sophie, on Facebook and on Instagram, and Tracy Ryan on Facebook. So I'm very responsive. You can hit me up on LinkedIn as well. I'm on LinkedIn almost every single day. And for anyone out there who would like to support our charity, we are always looking for donations. We always have kids that need help. There's always science that needs to be advanced. And that's www.savingsophie.org.
Awesome. Thanks again so much for being here. It is. It's been inspirational. And, you've got two huge cheerleaders for NKore and for Sophie for all the success. Would love to see this become hugely successful and help a lot of people.
Well, with people like you out there helping people like me talk about this more openly, hopefully I'm going to continue to get the support I need to move this into the clinic and start helping people everywhere.